Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The Supreme Court rejects Vodafone Idea and Bharti Airtel's pleas seeking a waiver of interest and penalty on the adjusted gross revenue dues, calls the petitions misconceived. The decision comes as a setback for Vodafone Idea. The company had cautioned the government that it won't survive beyond FY26 without relief. Wall Street opens with sharp cuts after Moody's downgrades America's sovereign credit rating. Bond prices tumble, yields spike with a 30-year US Treasury yield crossing 5%. The Indian government authorizes emergency procurement of weapons for the armed forces worth up to 24,000 crore rupees. Defence stocks see profit booking after the recent rally amidst concerns over steep valuations. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal in the United States as trade negotiations are expected to gather pace. Goyal will meet US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Trade Representative Jameson Greer. India's move to restrict imports from Bangladesh will impact goods worth $770 million, says the Global Trade Research Initiative. Former Indian envoy to Bangladesh, Veena Sikri, says Dhaka has not shown any interest to improve trade relations with New Delhi. The Enforcement Directorate arrests former UCO Bank CMD Subodh Kumar Goyal in connection with a 6,210 crore rupee loan fraud involving a steel company. ED alleges Goyal sanctioned large credit facilities and received substantial illegal kickbacks. A young employee of Ola's AI unit, Kruthrim, allegedly dies by suicide amid allegations of work pressure. Police register a case of unnatural death and summon the deceased's manager for questioning. The company says he was on personal leave and had requested for a leave extension, which was granted. Supreme Court rejects Madhya Pradesh Minister and BJP leader Vijay Shah's apology days after his derogatory remarks against Colonel Sophia Qureshi. The court calls his remarks crass, thoughtless and orders an SIT probe, but stays his arrest. Uber partners with ONDC for an in-app feature to book Delhi metro tickets. Uber is also bringing back food delivery with a new logistics push. Global CTO Praveen Naga says Elon Musk's vision of self-driving cars could be the future of transport. That's an exclusive. Well, let's head straight to the market action of the day. The markets closed mixed today with the benchmarks underperforming the broader markets. The Nifty failing to hold on to the 25,000 mark. This after the top blue chip stocks underperformed in today's session. The mid-caps and the Nifty Bank, though, closing in positive territory, but a flat close there. And the Sensex and the Nifty closing in the red. That was the market snapshot for you for the day. But let's now go straight to the top story this evening. The Supreme Court has rejected writ petitions filed by Vodafone Idea and Bharti Airtel seeking the waiver of interest and penalty on adjusted gross revenue dues. Now, the court has called the petitions misconceived. The court has already dismissed curative petitions filed by these companies. Vodafone Idea stock down nearly 9% after the ruling. Ashmit is standing by with more on what transpired in court today and whether Vodafone has exhausted all of its legal options. Ashmit, what now and what next for Vodafone Idea, given that it seems to have exhausted all its legal options?
Well, clearly appears to be the case, the Supreme Court rejecting this petition outright. In fact, at one point expressing shock as to how such a petition could have been filed in the first place, given that even the curative petition has been dismissed by the highest court of the country. The Supreme Court calling it a misconceived petition, rejecting this petition outright by all three companies involved, Vodafone Idea, Bharti Airtel, as well as Tata Tele. And what this firmly does is that it closes the door, at least on the judicial side, on the limited question of AGR and the interest and the penalty waiver that these three companies had been seeking. But why is it more painful for Vodafone Idea? The reason it's painful for them is that even before approaching the highest court of the country, they had knocked on the doors of the DOT, they had raised similar concerns, and there they had given an extremely gloomy picture saying that if the relief does not come from the government, the company will head into insolvency, the company will not survive beyond FY26. The answer that the DOT had given back then to Vodafone Idea and the answer that the DOT gave today before the highest court of the country is exactly the same. The government stance is clear. It cannot provide relief. It cannot consider this application for relief, given that its hands are tied on account of the Supreme Court's very own AGR judgment. So the government also making it clear that doors are shut, especially on account of the waiver relief. The only aspect that perhaps needs to be flagged is that in the course of these proceedings, Justice Pardiwala, who's heading this bench, made an observation observation where he said that if the government wants to help the parties in question, Vodafone Idea, Bharti Airtel, the courts will not come in the way, but they don't want to be party to any of those proceedings. But nonetheless, important to point out, these observations don't carry nearly as much weight as the order, and these observations find absolutely no mention in the final order that was passed dismissing the application by the telecom companies.
All right, Ashmit, appreciate you joining us there. So legal options exhausted for Vodafone Idea. Will the government intervene? Remember, the government is a 49% shareholder in the company, the largest shareholder by far, so we will have to wait to see. But let's go straight to the big global story tonight. Moody's downgrade of the US credit outlook also pushed oil prices lower. Fears of falling demand after China's industrial output slowed in April, weighing on prices. Meanwhile, the ratings downgrade also boosted safe haven demand for gold, and a softer dollar pushed the yellow metals prices higher today. Now, Moody's downgrade off the credit rating of the US from the highest level, citing deepening concerns over the nation's fiscal stability. The US government's credit rating has been downgraded from AAA to the second highest rating of AA1. This is the first time Moody's has downgraded America's long-term sovereign credit rating. This places the US on par with other advanced economies, including Austria, France, and the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent dismissed Moody's rating, calling it a lagging indicator. Take a look.
That Moody's is a lagging indicator. I think that's what everyone thinks of credit agencies. Larry Summers and I don't agree on everything, but he said that when they downgraded the U.S. in 2011. So it's a lagging indicator. And just like Sean Duffy said with our air traffic control system, we didn't get here in the past 100 days. It's the Biden administration and the spending that we have seen over the past 4 years. You know, we inherited 6.7% deficit to GDP, the highest when we weren't in a recession, not in a war, and we are determined to bring the spending down and grow the economy.
Well, that's Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, and President Trump's sweeping tax cut bill has now been approved by a key congressional committee. This is Trump's first big legislative push in his second tenure, and the measure would extend Trump's 2017 tax cuts and reduce taxes on some tips and overtime income. Non-partisan analysts say the bill would add $5 trillion to the nation's $36 trillion debt over the next decade. A possible vote on the bill in the House of Representatives could take place later this week. Now, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal is in the United States and is set to meet U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Sources say that Piyush Goyal will assess the progress made by delegation-level talks over the last 2 months. Speaking to Fox News over the weekend, President Trump repeated his claims on India charging high tariffs, saying it is impossible to do business there. When asked if a trade deal with India is close, Trump said, and I quote, "I'm in no rush. Everybody wants to make a deal with us." End of quote. Abhimanyu standing by with the latest. Abhimanyu, what can we now realistically expect from the Commerce Minister's Washington visit this week?
Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal is in the United States. He's going to meet the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer during his visit. Also, today onwards, talks between the negotiating teams of India and the United States are going to begin. They are slated to go on from the 19th to the 22nd of May. Several issues are going to be discussed, while the minister's visit is going to provide the necessary political level steer to over 2 months of BTA negotiations. An interim agreement on trade and goods could take place as part of early mutual wins in case both the sides agree. Also, the initial focus would be on issues pertaining to goods and non-tariff barriers. It remains to be seen whether issues like rules of origin and services may also figure in the talks, even as both the sides are looking to conclude the first tranche of the agreement by the fall of this year. Also, there is a 90-day pause in the imposition and the levy of tariffs by the United States, which is going to go on till the 9th of July. And both the sides are sounding confident as far as clinching a deal before that date is concerned. It remains to be seen how early a deal could be reached by both the sides, even as sectoral level engagements are also expected to take place. And India's proposal to levy retaliatory tariffs on steel and aluminium may also figure as part of discussions between both the sides, in which several issues are going to be discussed. But any finality would only be attained only when a deal is inked. So clearly all things till now are not as clear as they should be as far as any finality to the negotiation is concerned.
Well, will the recent comments from President Trump impact trade negotiations? We will just have to wait to see. Abhimanyu, many thanks for joining us. Now, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri briefing Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs on Operation Sindoor today. The meeting was chaired by Congress MP Shashi Tharoor. Sources told Network 18 that members asked Misri why the US President Donald Trump had announced the ceasefire before an announcement from the Indian government. While there was no direct response to that, Misri is believed to have told members that there was no interference by Trump and the decision to halt military operations was a bilateral issue. He also mentioned that there was no indication of any nuclear attack by Pakistan. Members also reportedly asked Misri to quantify the number of jets India had lost during Operation Sindoor. Misri told them that details could not be provided because of military compulsions and security. Now, the government has authorised emergency weapons procurement worth up to 24,000 crore rupees for the armed forces. Sources tell CNBC TV 18 that procurement will include loitering munitions and counter-UAV systems. Parikshit is standing by with more details. Parikshit, what can we now expect in terms of emergency procurement?
Well, this confirms a CNBC TV 18 news break that the government is all set to go in for emergency procurements and replenishment procurements as well. We had reported a few days ago how the industry expects orders to the tune of 39,000 to 40,000 crores for all equipment and ammunition that was used up during Operation Sindoor and to replace that as well. Now we have confirmation that the Defence Acquisition Council met recently and gave its approval to authorize the armed forces to go in for emergency procurements. Now this is for loitering munitions, anti-tank guided missiles, counter-UAV systems, including drones, and also artillery ammunition for the Indian Army. Now the acquisitions will take place for all three services. Each vice chief has been empowered to order weapons and ammunition to the tune of about 300 crore rupees each. We are yet to get an exact number as to what will be the quantum of procurements by the government, but we are told that the upper cap is 15% of the defence modernization budget, which is 1,60,000 crores for FY26. So 24,000 crores is the upper limit. We're told that the numbers could be slightly less than this because deliveries have to be made within a year. So what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at contracts to be finalized in the next 40 days from now. This will include both domestic and foreign suppliers, and we're looking at acquisition of Scalp and Hammer missiles as well. Those will require consent of the Ministry of Defence because they are foreign purchases. Secondly, after finalization of contracts within 40 days, deliveries have to be made within a year. So this may not be all. There may be more acquisitions that the government may be looking to do in the next few months.
Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. And staying with defence, India's top defence companies are eyeing a bigger order book this fiscal. Prime Minister Modi, in his address to the nation last week, highlighted that Operation Sindoor was the Make in India moment for the defence sector. We spoke with top executives of India's top defence equipment companies to get a sense of their projected order book. Take a look.
अब हमारे पास करीब 65,000 करोड़ का LCH का ऑर्डर जो हाल ही में आया था, बिगेस्ट ऑर्डर इंडियन डिफेंस हिस्ट्री में है। ये एक बड़ी ऑर्डर है 156 LCH। दूसरी है जो अभी 83 LCM मार्क 1A जो एग्जीक्यूशन में है, और 12 Su-30 जो हम बनाने वाले हैं वो एक ऑर्डर था, और 240 Su-30 इंजन्स। कुल मिला के आज के दिन 1,90,000 तक ऑर्डर बुक है, और ये अगले साल में और ज्यादा होगा।
We currently have an order book position of about 691 crores. But again, we are expecting a few more orders in this and the next quarter. We were saying about 800 crores in the first half of the year, and I think we still stick to that. I think that 800 crores is still very visible to us. We should be getting those orders. But with the new, situation, I think the order book position will be substantially higher.
And more defence stocks have seen some profit booking in trade today amidst concerns over valuation. Shares of drone maker Idea Forge trading at a price-to-earnings multiple of 124 times, even as it remains 33% away from its 52-week highs. Almost all defence companies are trading at a PE multiple of more than 30 times. Sanjeev Prasad of Kotak believes valuations are not adding up.
We were just buying anything and everything without looking at, whether the nature was going to the same as in the past as explaining. Second thing, whether the kind of EBITDA margin many of these companies are earning, whether that will sustain in the future or not, and I'm surprised to see the kind of very, very high margins this company is reporting, so that could also come under some question mark. And the third is obviously the valuation part, which every investor has to look at ultimately, right? Ultimately, you're paying for whatever you're buying, and you look at some of the numbers they make, really, very little sense to me, at least. If I look at, let's say, something like a potential PR, since you talked about that, the market cap is somewhere about 55,000 crores. The net worth is only, by the way, 1,300 crores.
Well, a question mark there on the valuations of defence stocks, which have run up quite significantly. The government has imposed fresh import restrictions on Bangladesh. Now, the move comes after Dhaka imposed curbs on Indian goods. According to a report by the Global Trade Research Initiative, India's restrictions will impact 42% of Bangladesh's exports, which amount to $770 million. Many categories of goods won't be allowed to enter India via land routes. This will be applicable specifically to ready-to-made garments, carbonated drinks, cotton yarn, waste, processed foods and wooden furniture. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, the former Indian ambassador to Bangladesh, Veena Sikri, said that Bangladesh has shown complete lack of interest in improving trade ties with India. Here's more.
Bangladesh has shown its complete lack of interest in having a good bilateral relationship with India. And I think that whatever you mentioned about the effect on Turkey, the same feeling is there today for Bangladesh. You've seen how illegal immigrants from Bangladesh are being rounded up and sent back into Bangladesh, including the Rohingyas. There is a great deal of anger because, Bangladesh-India was one of the best relationships going. It was a model relationship. It was based on mutual benefit, and it was really benefiting. Bangladesh had 6% and more growth rate every year. Already in 8 months of imposing these restrictions on Indian exports and trade with India, their growth rate has halved.
Well, a further deterioration in the India-Bangladesh relationship. In international news, Israel's army has warned residents living in southern Gaza's Khan Yunis to evacuate. In a post on X, the IDF said it will launch what it called an unprecedented attack targeting Hamas infrastructure. At least 46 died today after Israeli forces carried out 30 airstrikes within an hour in the area. Tel Aviv announced it will allow a basic amount of food to enter Gaza to avoid what it has called a starvation crisis. From one war-torn region to another, Russia launched its largest drone attack on Ukraine since the war began. President Trump spoke to Ukrainian President Zelensky and NATO leaders. Earlier, Ukrainian officials said that Russia had launched over 270 drones in one night, largely dominating central Kyiv. One woman was killed and 4 others were injured in the drone attack. The United Kingdom and European Union have sealed new agreements on defence and trade. European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen met UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer for the first time. Between the two sides since Brexit, the deal includes the establishment of a formal security and defence partnership. The two sides also agreed to make it easier for food and visitors from the UK to reach the EU. Speaking to the press, UK Prime Minister Starmer said the deal gives Britain unprecedented access to EU's market.
This is the first UK-EU summit. It marks a new era in our relationship. And this deal is a win-win. It delivers what the British public voted for last year. It gives us unprecedented access to the EU market, the best of any country outside of the EU or EFTA, all while sticking to the red lines in our manifesto about not rejoining the single market, the customs union, and no return to freedom of movement.
Now, back home, the Enforcement Directorate has arrested Subodh Kumar Goyal, the former chairman and managing director of UCO Bank. The ED said that Goyal was arrested on the grounds of money laundering in an alleged bank loan fraud case. Ritu's standing by with more details. Ritu, take us through why this arrest.
Well, yes, the Enforcement Directorate has arrested former UCO Bank CMD Subodh Kumar Goyal on money laundering charges in a bank loan fraud case of more than 6,200 crore rupees that is linked to a Kolkata-based company called Concast Steel and Power. Now, this arrest was made on the 16th of May and he's now been remanded to ED custody until the 21st of May. Now, according to the ED statement, during Goyal's tenure as the CMD, UCO Bank sanctioned large loans to Concast Steel, which were later siphoned off by the borrower, and in return, Goyal allegedly received substantial kickbacks that were routed through a complex web of shell companies, dummy individuals, and family members to disguise the criminal origin of the money. These included cash, cash, luxury goods, immovable property, and high-end hotel stays as well. Now, the ED has identified several assets tied to these shell entities and directly linked them to the diverted loan funds. The ED also said that it found incriminating materials that detailed these illicit transactions during searches that were conducted in April at Goyal's residence and those of his associates. Now, earlier in the same case, keep in mind the ED had provisionally attached about 510 crores worth of assets that belong to Conca Steel and Power and its promoter Sanjay Surekha, who was arrested in December and remains in judicial custody. Further investigation in this case is still ongoing. Now, Subodh Kumar Goyal has had a long career spanning public sector banks like Bank of Baroda, Allahabad Bank, including his stint as the UCO Bank chairman and, interestingly, as the chief vigilance officer at Bank of India during 1999 to 2002. He is also said to have played a role in unearthing the Ketan Parekh scam, and so the irony of Goyal's arrest coming now isn't really lost on the financial world.
Ritu, many thanks. Now, a young employee of Ola's AI unit, Krutrim, allegedly died by suicide amid allegations of work pressure. The police have registered a case of unnatural death and summoned the deceased manager for questioning. The company says he was on personal leave and had requested for a leave extension, which was granted. Rachna joins us now with more details. Rachna, what do we know about things as they currently stand?
Well, a tragic incident at Ola's artificial intelligence unit, Krutrim, has now escalated into a police investigation after the alleged suicide of a young employee, Nikhil Somwanshi. Sources say the Karnataka police have registered a case of unnatural death based on a complaint from Nikhil's family. Now, according to police sources, Nikhil's manager, who's based in the US, has been summoned for questioning. Police have also recorded statements of other Ola employees and requested documents detailing Nikhil's appointment, pay structure, hours of work and responsibilities. However, they're yet to ascertain the exact reason why Nikhil took this drastic step and if work pressure was a factor at all. Meanwhile, Nikhil's colleagues and a few former colleagues from Ola Krutrim spoke to CNBC TV18 on the condition of anonymity. Nikhil joined Ola Krutrim last year as a fresher from IISc. According to people who worked with him, Nikhil found himself overburdened with work after two colleagues resigned recently, leaving him solely responsible for a critical chat project. Sources say the pressure on Nikhil intensified in recent months. He even took a month off as a mental health break. This has been corroborated by Ola. In a statement, Ola said, and I quote, Nikhil was on personal leave at the time of the incident. He had reached out to his manager on the 8th of April, expressing that he needed rest and was promptly granted personal time off. Later on the 17th of April, he shared that he was feeling better, but would benefit from additional rest, and so his leave was extended accordingly, end of quote. However, current and former employees at Ola Krutrim claim that there is no concept of a weekend at Ola Krutrim. Ola CEO Bhavish Agarwal has said publicly that he does not believe in the concept of weekends, calling it a Western construct. Employees also claim that the timelines for projects were frequently shifted, adding to the work pressure. Former and current employees at Ola Krutrim, whom we spoke to, say that Nikhil's manager was also subjected to verbal abuse by the top management, putting his team under more pressure. We've also learned that a mail was sent to the HR asking to fire the remaining members of the team following Nikhil's untimely death and telling them that they're incompetent. According to sources, Nikhil had been working on Krutrim Chat, a feature slated to launch sometime this week. Nikhil's current and former colleagues claim that the toxic work culture at Ola Krutrim fosters an environment where aggression towards subordinates is normalized. Nikhil allegedly confided in work friends about the mounting work pressure that he was under recently. Back to you.
Rachna, many thanks for joining us. Up next on India Business Hour, Uber partners with ONDC for an in-app feature to book Delhi metro tickets. Uber is also bringing back food delivery with a new logistics push. More on that in just a bit. And you can catch all of CNBC TV 18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Jio Hotstar. Well, the Delhi High Court has adjourned the proceedings on a petition filed by Turkey-based Shelby Airport Services. The company is contesting the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security's decision to revoke its security clearance. Now, the Turkish firm argued that they've been operating in India for 17 years without any issues and have employed 14,000 people. The company added that they were not given a rationale for the revocation of security clearance. Meanwhile, the centre argued that it received security inputs about hazards posed if Shelby continues operations at Indian airports. It provided what it believes is evidence to the court in a sealed cover. Meanwhile, airports have been put in place Meanwhile, a temporary system has been put in place to continue operations without any disruptions at airports where Chelbi was operating. Madiha is standing by to explain to us what is going on at the airports. Madiha, so temporary arrangement at this point in time. Take us through what we should now expect.
So different arrangements have been worked out by different airports. Some have allowed existing players at the airport to take over Chelbi's operations, while few have roped in a new player. Like you mentioned, this is a temporary arrangement and we have been told it will continue for 90 days, 3 months, post which airports will have to float a tender and invite formal bids to appoint a permanent player that will take over Chelbi's operations. We have been highlighting that airports with passenger volumes of over 10 million are required to have 3 ground handling companies. So here's what's happening at the 8 airports where Chelbi operated. At Delhi Airport, ground handling is taken over by Air India SATS and Bird Worldwide Flight Services. Delhi Cargo Terminal Ops have been taken over by the GMR Group. At Mumbai Airport, ground handling ops have been taken over by a new player, which is Indo-Thai Airport Management Services. So Mumbai Airport now has 3 players, AIASL, BWFS and Indo-Thai. At Ahmedabad Airport too, ground handling ops have been taken over by Indo-Thai. So the 3 players now include AIASL, BWFS and Indo-Thai. At Bengaluru Airport, ground handling ops have been taken over by AI SATS and BWFS. Chelbi's Hyderabad ground handling ops have been taken over by AI SATS and BWFS. In Chennai, ground handling ops have been taken over by AIASL and BWFS. Same at Cochin Airport, ground handling ops taken over by AIASL and BWFS. At Mopa Airport in Goa, Chelbi was the only ground handling company. So at Mopa, the operations have been given to the Bird Worldwide Flight Services.
Madiha, many thanks. Now here's a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. Uber has partnered with ONDC for an in-app feature to book Delhi metro tickets. The company's global CTO Praveen Naga said Uber is also bringing back food delivery, but with a new logistics push, adding that Elon Musk's vision of self-driving cars could be the future of transport. Take a look.
Starting with food deliveries, right? I think then you can imagine the possibilities here, which is pharmacy delivery or like grocery delivery or any healthcare products delivery, retail stuff, right? All these things are very much possible. We already see this in our market. As I said, consumer products, people are already mimicking those things to get it, so we can now naturally do this. But it's very interesting with ONDC, what will happen is we're able to get all the small merchants into the platform. Autonomous cars is going to play a big role in a mobility ecosystem. It won't be the only play. It will be one of the modes of transportation. Now at Uber, we strongly believe in it, and we partner with several partners who actually work on autonomous stuff. We launched in Austin, and we're going to launch in Atlanta with Waymo, and we have partnerships with 14 other partners around the world. We launched in Abu Dhabi as well. If autonomous tech is successful in India, Uber will be the first one to bring the tech.
Well, that's Uber. Walmart-owned e-commerce company Myntra is going global. The fashion retailer's forayed into Singapore, aiming to cater to the Indian diaspora. The launch is part of a broader global strategy to tap into new customer segments and build brand affinity. The CEO of Myntra, Nandita Sinha, explains why the company chose Singapore for its international foray.
There is a large Indian diaspora that lives across the world, and we want to tap into that diaspora. We chose Singapore first because it's a country where already, around 5% of the Indian diaspora already, visits Myntra, the Myntra platform. Why we wanted to get into this venture was because of the fact that almost 10 to 15% of our traffic on the web actually comes from international markets. So we knew that there was an opportunity where consumers were looking at us.
Well, that's Myntra looking at global markets, starting with Singapore. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. The news will continue right here on CNBC TV 18. Stay tuned. We're back in a moment.